So hi everybody, this is Hustle Hub. Today I'm with the host of the Finance Unboxed channel. He talks about career in finance and especially in the Big Four. So please, can you tell us a bit more about yourself, your career, your path in the Big Four, and what motivated you to start your YouTube channel?
Sure, thank you for having me on your channel. As you say, I work in the Big Four, and specifically I work in the M&A team at one of the Big Four accounting firms. So for those that aren't in the know, the Big Four are the largest four accounting firms in the world, but they also do other services as well. They also provide other services such as management consulting, M&A, and a wide range of services, which I'll get into. But the companies themselves are Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, and EY, Ernst & Young. So I've been working at one of these firms for 6 years now after I graduated. So I work in the UK and I work in at one of these firms, and I've gone through the graduate program. So I started in 2015. As part of these graduate programs, one thing that is very common is that you'll go through an accountancy qualification. So they'll pay for you to go through the accountancy training. And so at the end of it, eventually, once you pass, you get your chartered accountancy qualification. So that's one of the that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people do apply to this graduate program, or do these graduate programs at the Big Four, because it's such a popular qualification and it's well recognized as well. So that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I was attracted to this graduate program at this Big Four company. So yeah, as I said, I started in 2015. So even before that, I did economics at the University of Sheffield, which is in the north of England. I did economics for 3 years. I think a lot of people that, I mean, not a lot of people, but quite a few people that join the Big Four come from an accounting and finance background. That's what they study at university. I suppose there are, I get this question a lot, asking me whether you need to have an accountancy and finance background to work at the Big Four, and the answer to that is no. There are a lot of people that don't come from that background. I know a lot of people that I work with have done engineering or law, for example. So you certainly don't need to have that accountancy and finance background. The reason why I chose economics is because I felt it gave me a wider range of options after I graduated. This is my personal opinion, but I feel if you do accounting and finance, you are fairly limited in terms of what career opportunities you get into. The Big Four being, I suppose, the main target for most accounting and finance graduates. But anyway, so I did economics, had really good fun at university in Sheffield, and then started in the graduate program in 2015. So I suppose I was in a fortunate position that I started straight into the M&A team. So in terms of most of the graduates that get onto these graduate programs, they start in either audit and tax, the Big Four in the UK, and I'll take on thousands of graduates in those departments. They do take a few in the other departments as well, consulting and in transactions. And so I was one of those few people that joined in the transactions team at one of these Big Four. And yeah, so I still went to the chartered accountancy qualification. That was a challenging 2 years, and it's an accelerated process with the Big Four and the graduate program. Normally you take between 3 and 4 years to do all the accountancy exams, but at the Big Four, it's done in 2 years. So I remember I did 11 or 12 exams to get this chartered accountancy qualification. So I suppose one benefit of sort of coming back to this point about accountancy and finance at university, one benefit of doing that course is you get exemptions from certain exams when you're doing the CA qualification. Because I didn't do it and I did economics, I had to do all of the exams, but that was fine. You still need to develop the fundamentals of accounting and finance, and that's what's covered in the initial exam, which you get an exemption to if you do accounting and finance at university. So yeah, so I did my accountancy exam, but yeah, I started working in M&A from day one, which is really interesting. And I suppose that was one of the reasons why I chose M&A. it was because I'd heard about it before, done my research about what's involved in M&A, what's involved in deal making, and what's required from you as a graduate and working in M&A. So I started off as an analyst. I think I was an analyst for maybe a couple of years, and then got promoted to senior analyst. So I know in each different company, even in investment banks or boutique investment banks, the different terms for the same position. But the term for me was analyst and then senior analyst. And now, after I think 2 years as senior analyst, I've now got promoted to manager, which is also called associate in some investment banks. So that's the position I'm in now. I've worked across several different industries, done deals across several different industries, which has been really interesting, and had really good fun, and developed a lot of experience, which I'm really grateful for.
Okay. So you talked a bit about your background and how you got where you are. So you studied economics, but what was the allure of going into the Big Four compared to other companies or other companies that are involved in finance, let's say banking or I don't know, investment banking, asset management? What motivated you to get into the Big Four compared to these other opportunities?
Yeah, so I suppose the options that were in front of me were the Big Four, working at a boutique investment bank or one of the larger investment banks, as you said, asset management, or another sort of financial advisory firm. And then I suppose another completely different group is sort of working in the corporation, so working in the finance team of a corporation, whether that's FP&A or the treasury department or whatever. So I suppose the first thing which I touched on previously was the fact that the Big Four offered this accountancy qualification. I thought it was pretty important for me to get some form of qualification after I graduated. I didn't do a master's after I finished my bachelor's degree, and so I felt that getting a qualification would be good for my longer term career. So that was one of the reasons. Naturally, I think some corporations also offer some form of chartered accountancy qualification or a management accountancy qualification as part of their own graduate programs. So what appealed to me about the Big Four was working at one of the largest firms in the world, and getting to work with very large clients, publicly listed companies, companies that everyone knows about. So I think having that large corporation on my CV to start off with, I felt that was going to help me in my long-term career. So that was only one of them. And then I suppose looking at investment banks, etc., I think some of them don't offer a qualification when you start. So I think that was one thing that drove my attention away slightly. But again, they are very sort of respected firms as well. So I knew that wasn't going to be a bad option either. So naturally, I did what I recommend everyone to do, is apply to all the organizations and get experience of doing interviews and writing applications, and just thinking through what your strengths are and what areas you could improve in. So certainly the Big Four were top of my agenda, but that didn't stop me applying for other companies as well.
Okay. Just one curiosity that I have. Is it more common to see people getting in with just a bachelor, or is it more common to see people in Big Four that enter with a master's?
Yeah, so in the UK, it's very common to see people with just a bachelor's degree. So 3 years of accounting and finance, 4 years of accounting and finance, economics and engineering, as I said previously. It's naturally some people do masters as well, and but I think the UK is separate, and I can only speak about the UK, having some sort of knowledge about it. You don't see a lot of people with the master's degree. You don't come across a lot of people with the MBA either. I think that's much more common in the US, where you see a lot of people that start off maybe at the Big Four, but then leave after 2-3 years to do an MBA at some business schools. So Yeah, in terms of the UK, it's very common to see people that have just done the bachelor's degree. And maybe just expanding on that, the reason why I did want to do a master's is because I felt that if I did do a master's, that would sort of drive me down a more academic path, and which I knew I wanted to avoid, or I didn't really find that interesting at all. So that's the reason why I sort of started looking for jobs straight away after I graduated after university.
Okay. So you talked about the recruitment process and getting used to send emails and get involved in these processes. How did the recruitment process work when you applied for the Big Four? How many interviews did you have to go through? And is it standardized across different geographies in different countries, or it changes based on where you are?
Yeah. So the recruitment process that I did was, I think it's pretty similar across all the Big Four. There might be a few different tests, etc., but I think they're pretty standard across the Big Four. So you first start off with a online test, a numerical and logical reasoning test. And so this is, I think, very common these days, doing a logical and reasoning test and a numerical test. Not too complicated at all. I suppose the biggest challenge with those is the time limit that they put on these tests, and that's where the difficulty lies, just getting everything done within the time limit. And then, so managed to pass those tests, fortunately. And then I had a phone interview with, I think it's with Recruitment. So it's not with anyone in the team, but someone from HR will call you, and they have a standard set of questions. And so these questions are, again, not technical in nature. They are about sort of what you think your strengths are, talking about certain situations you might have faced. So you can certainly prepare for them. And that's what I did, made sure that I prepared as much as I possibly could before the phone interview. So I think that lasted an hour, and then got told in a few days that they wanted me at an assessment center. So what an assessment center is so this was obviously way back in 2015, before COVID, etc. So people, all a different amount of graduates got together. I think in my group there were 15 people. And so it's an entire day, morning to late afternoon, where you go to their offices and you do a variety of different tasks. So you have a group exercise. I think you have a case study. That I remember, I did a case study. I did. I think there might have been another numerical test that I did, and then you do an interview with a senior individual in the team, and generally it's either a partner at the Big Four or an executive partner, so another senior member of the team. So that's what I did. I remember I went down to their offices, and there were people in a similar situation to me. People that had sort of just finished university and looking to join the graduate program. And so the group exercise, it was one where they give you a case study and you have to sort of talk through it with the group. You discuss sort of what you think the right solution is, and you have to sort of debate it in your group. And so there are particular techniques. For example, you don't want to hog the limelight and just keep on speaking for the entire hour. So you want to give people opportunities, and then you want to start the debate, start asking interesting questions, and questions that will move the group forwards in terms of coming to an intelligent solution. So you definitely need a strategy when you go and do these group sessions, in terms of how you want to approach them and how you want to be perceived during that session. So certainly I think you can prepare for those sessions as well, but naturally you do need to react according to what the case study is on that day. Then you have got your individual case study, and so that again, it's not a complicated problem that you're trying to solve or you're giving your opinion on it, but it's more about how do you manage the time limit that they set for you, and that is a challenge. How do you go through all the information and understand what's the most relevant points, and how can you then how can you then give back a intelligent sort of opinion and an intelligent recommendation to your client. I think it's always a client sort of based case study. And then, there's another numerical test, so the one you do in person. And then, I suppose another really important aspect of that is your interview with the partner or the executive partner in that team. And so again, you have to prepare. You have to make sure that you have examples of different scenarios you've been in, working well under pressure, working well with tight deadlines, all the general sort of stuff. And I'm sure if you're preparing for other interviews for other companies, you'll have some of that material. So that's another thing that I had sort of I had sort of 4 or 5 pages of different examples, so that I could bring them up whenever people ask me questions about these situations. So I definitely recommend having sort of written down, or if you're good at memory, then have them in your mind. But you certainly do need to prepare all these kind of things before the partner interview.
Okay, so do you think are there better practices to prepare for it? Something like being cool when you're presented with the case and you don't know how to approach it right away, or is it something that you can train, or you have to go through different times before you get it right at the interview itself?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I think you can definitely prepare for it and practice it. I know there are companies that offer these sort of practice case studies online. So I think some of them are paid, some of them might be free. So definitely, I'd recommend doing those practice case studies. And the most important thing is doing this practice under the same time limit that you're going to face. So if it's half an hour, make sure that you're giving yourself 30 minutes to do it, because you need to be under that time pressure, like you will be when you're doing the actual case study. So yes, definitely practice. I suppose if you can't find case studies, one more thing that you could do is just reading the Financial Times, for example, and building a case study yourself. So reading an in-depth piece of article, in-depth piece of analysis, and then giving yourself sort of 10 minutes to write down what are the key points from that article, and if it's a business that's facing a problem, what would your solution be? So sometimes you have to be creative, and then you can maybe ask your friend to look at the answer and critique it. So sometimes you're not going to get the ideal practice that you want, but sometimes you just have to be flexible and find these creative solutions to get that practice in. Numerical tests, for example, I mean, there are plenty of companies that do these numerical tests online. So I remember I'd done a few free practice numerical tests before I did my actual one. And then I mean, again, you can ask your friends to set some problems up for you, and then you've got to solve them in a particular time frame, and naturally you'll help them out in a similar way, maybe. So going back to your sort of main question, you can definitely practice it, and you definitely I think shouldn't waste the opportunity in terms of the interview and the opportunity to get that role. So try and do as much practice as you can to set yourself up in the best way.
Okay. So you talked about how after you got hired, you had to go through in order to get the CA. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What it's like to study for that? What are the topics covered? And is it recognized just in the UK, or is it recognized internationally?
Sure, yeah. So I did the ICAS qualification, the ICAS CA qualification. ICAS stands for the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Scotland. So that is the chartered accountancy body in Scotland. There's another one for England and Wales and Northern Ireland. And so, in terms of how the entire experience was, I think to sum it up in one word, it'll be challenging. It's a challenging process getting the chartered accountancy qualification, and I suppose the challenging aspect of it is balancing your study and your work. So how we did it was we had physical classes, so we actually went to college and had someone in front of us sort of going through the material. I know nowadays, I think a large proportion or most of it will be online classes. But in terms of the classes themselves, they were the key topics in the chartered accountancy qualification, if you break it down, are audit, tax. Then you've got what else have you got? Sort of finance as a very large topic itself, and that covers a range of different things, as you can imagine, investment theory, treasury department, what they got up to. Yeah, there's a wide variety of sort of topics within finance itself that they cover. And I suppose those are the three primary aspects. Within audit, you'll also have financial reporting, that might be a different group altogether, but within that you'll have your all your regulations and all that kind of stuff, because you need to understand the financial regulation as well, being a chartered accountant. So those were the different sort of high level categories that were covered. And we, in terms of the classes, I think we went away for 2 or 3 weeks. So we went away from work to spend all that time in the classroom, 9 to 5 in the evening, going through all the material. And there's a lot of material to get through. So that's one of the big challenges doing this qualification. There's a lot of material, and they go through it at a very quick pace. And so you do your 9 to 5 in the classroom, but then you have to spend time in the evening going through that material again, because the speed at which they cover it, you're just not going to register it during the day. And again, you need to sort of go over the material again and again, so that it sort of gets ingrained in your mind. And then you've got tests, etc., in between, which you need to revise for. So it's an intense process. You spend most of your weekend as well then studying, and so that's where the challenge really lies. The material itself is sort of complicated to a certain extent, and again, this is, I think, a very personal opinion. Some people find it incredibly easy. Some people, I know people that, for example, did law. They find it more challenging to get their head around the maths that's required. It's not complicated maths, but given that they might have not touched a calculator during the university period at all because they did law, they can find it challenging to sort of get used to that, doing some sort of simple maths very quickly. But again, there are people that have done it, so it certainly is possible. So yeah, again, overall, very challenging. So I remember I started in September 2015, and in December 2015, I had 6 exams that I had to do. So yeah, not a lot of time to fit in all that material. So yeah, that was challenging. That was a challenging period. But then, so I think in terms of how the ICAS is structured, you've got, I think it's 8 exams at the first stage, and then 4 exams in the second stage, and then 1 final very large case study in the third stage. And the very technical exams are in the second stage. So I think that's where a large proportion of individuals falter. Yeah, it's a challenging sort of process overall. But yeah, a lot of people do it. And I suppose one thing I'd say is, I suppose like many things in life, the more time you spend preparing and doing the work, the easier you're going to make it for yourself to pass. So it's challenging, but it's certainly possible to pass it, and it's certainly rewarding as well at the end of it. So to answer your second question in terms of whether it's internationally recognized, the simple answer is yes, it is internationally recognized. One thing in terms of whether, if you want to practice, if I wanted to practice, for example, now in America, it will be recognized, but what would be ideal would be to get that CPA qualification, which is the equivalent to the CA in the UK. And given the fact that I've got my CA now in the UK, I need to do, I think, just 1 or 2 more additional exams to get the CPA. So I don't need to start all the way from level 1. And so that's how it works across different countries. So if you get your CA in that geography, you need to do some additional exams to get the CA equivalent in another country. And so then you can start practicing in other countries as well. So overall, yeah, I don't have any intentions at the moment to work in another country, but if I did, then yeah, that's the road I'd go down.
Okay. So you explained it very clearly, but why are the Big Four strengths emphasizing this certification so much, wouldn't it be easier to train new employees internally, like putting them next to a more experienced audit, for example? Why is it so important for employees to have this certification rather than train them internally?
Yeah, so I suppose the first thing I'd say is there is a lot of training internally. There's a lot of on-the-job training, and which comes naturally when you're doing the job, but there's also sort of training classes and training courses during the job itself, where you'll go away for maybe 1 or 2 days with your colleagues or with your peers at the same level, and you'll do sort of 2 days of straight training, technical training. But the reason why the Big Four find it easier to do it this way is one, once you do that, you get a qualification that's recognized sort of industry-wide. So it's almost a sort of a badge of approval that their employees get. And so your CFOs of your clients, the financial controllers of your clients, they might have gone through the process as well. And so they recognize that they're chartered accountants, and so they've got a certain level of skill and certain level of technical expertise, and so it gives credibility to your employees as a Big Four firm, and that naturally sort of builds confidence with clients, etc., etc. So that's a really important reason. And then again, yeah, I think it's another way to attract graduates to the Big Four as well, given this qualification, because the way I see the Chartered Accountancy qualification is it's an insurance policy for anyone's career in finance. So if, for example, tomorrow, if I wanted to walk away from M&A, I can go and work in a finance team in a corporation, and people will really recognize that I've got the CA qualification, so I've got this base level of technical skills. So that's why I say it's an insurance policy. If you haven't got that, clearly it's not. I'm not saying that you can't get a job in finance without it, but it certainly builds a lot of credibility. And so yeah, you always have that sort of those options in terms of going to another finance firm or doing something else in finance with the CA qualification.
Okay. So you went into M&A. Is it common to see people that get hired and go directly into M&A, or is it more common to see people that first get into audit and then move to M&A? And are audits moving when audits move inside the Big Four? Are there other departments where it's quite usual to see former auditors go to?
Yeah. So I was quite fortunate. The Big Four don't take on a lot of graduates in the M&A team, their M&A teams, and the reason for that is the M&A teams themselves are much smaller than the audit team and the tax team, for example. So they take on very few graduates in the M&A team. So I was pretty fortunate to get the timing right in that sense. And so a lot of people will start with the Big Four in audit or tax, as I mentioned, or consulting. They take a few graduates on in consulting as well. And in terms of how people end up in the M&A team in Big Four, yes, a lot of people do transition from audit to the other departments, M&A being one of them. And then you also have people that come from boutique investment banks, and then other sort of they might come from another advisory firm. So yeah, you get a variety of different individuals with different backgrounds. In terms of where do people in the audit department generally move to, I know a lot of them do want to work in consulting or do want to work in corporate finance, M&A. But I think the department which is a very natural transition for people in audit is actually the due diligence team. Which sits sort of within the corporate finance bucket. So within the corporate finance as a bucket, you have your M&A team, you've got due diligence, then you've got something called sort of transaction strategy or operational strategy. And so, again, these departments have different names in different Big Four firms, but sometimes it's called M&A integration. So these departments help companies integrate a business into their own business. So they might give advice on, again, the staff base, the IT infrastructure, a wide variety of different things, strategy, product strategy, it might be. So you've got M&A integration as well in this corporate finance bucket. Sometimes you'll have restructuring or insolvency that might fall within this corporate finance bucket. And then you'll finally have the valuations team, so that do financial modeling as a sort of primary role. So those are the different sort of teams within the corporate finance bucket. And the most natural transition for someone that's done audit is actually the due diligence team. And that's because it's probably one of the more technical elements of corporate finance. People who have done audit have that technical background and have that technical foundation, and they find it much easier to transition into that due diligence role, which requires this technical sort of foundation in audit and in understanding accounting. So that's a very natural transition, and a lot of people go from audit to due diligence. In terms of the due diligence team, I can't remember seeing many people that started off in due diligence. A lot of people just transition from audit to due diligence after they've done their chartered accountancy qualification. So generally they wait 3 or 4 years and then they move across to due diligence. So I think that's a very natural transition. And then again, after they do maybe 2 or 3 years in due diligence, then they get an understanding of what's involved in a transaction. Then they move across to M&A, where they're directly advising clients on their M&A strategy. So yeah, I think that's the most popular route, going from audit to due diligence and then to M&A.
Okay. So it was pretty clear. So online, it's quite easy to find content about auditing, what it's like to work there. And can you tell us a bit more? What are the differences between audit and M&A in terms of work-life balance, salary, and how the work is distributed? For example, all people know that in audit there are busy seasons. Is there something similar in M&A, or the work is well distributed along the year?
Yeah, so let me start with the last point first. So in terms of busy season, at least in the UK, it's very fixed between January and March for auditors, and that's because most companies have their financial year end in December, and so they sort of close the books between the sort of first 3 months, and so. So the auditors will be very busy during that period. Naturally, that's what's called busy season. They'll be working 12 to 16-hour days, or sometimes even more. They might work some weekends. Again, that depends on which audit team you're in and how that's staffed. So that's an incredibly busy season for all auditors. But I know some individuals, for example, in some of my friends, they're fairly busy across the year because there's always something going on. There might be quarterly accounts to sort of close and all that kind of stuff. So they can be busy at different periods. But as well, one thing is you have some visibility about when you're going to be busy, because you know your clients' year end is this particular date, so you're going to be busy a couple of months after that. So that's one aspect. There's a bit more visibility in terms of when you're going to be busy when you work in audit. Compare that to M&A, you've got much less visibility. It's all dependent on the project. It's all dependent on the deal. In M&A deals, things can be very busy and that can happen very quickly, or things can be much more subdued for a while when you're waiting on information or when you're waiting on the counterparty to come back with information or whatever it is. So there's much more variability in terms of how busy you are, but generally when you are busy, you'll be working much longer hours, and there'll be weekend work at certain times. As well, one sort of key difference or interesting difference is if you look at the bulge bracket investment banks, your JP Morgans, Goldman Sachs, etc., and then boutique investment banks and the big four. I think the work-life balance is slightly better, I'd say, in the big four and the boutique investment banks, and yeah, I think that's, I suppose, reflected in the compensation as well. So it's definitely challenging. You'll definitely spend a lot of late nights when you're working on a deal at these boutique investment banks, at the Big Four as well. But I think it's less, that intensity isn't sort of 365 days a year. You will get your easier times as well. So yeah, I'd say it's. I think that's what makes it sustainable in my mind, at least, and for me. I'm not sure whether I'd want a intense lifestyle for the entire year, but I appreciate what the experience that I'm getting now, and it makes it worth those long hours that I do sometimes. So yeah, that's what I'd say about sort of work-life balance. And in terms of the experience, I think audit is much more structured. So given the number of people that have gone through the graduate program in audit and even in tax, you've got your roles, you've got your distinct roles, and you've got your certain tasks that you do as a junior auditor in year one. Everyone knows what their tasks that an auditor will do in year two and year three and year four, etc. In M&A, at least from my experience, it was much more flexible, given there are fewer individuals in the team and the fewer juniors in the team as well. You get involved in a lot more tasks, and you get much more responsibility, I think, as well, in terms of speaking to clients, etc., from a very early stage. So I think that's a key difference between audit and M&A. And I suppose the obvious thing to say is these are two very different roles altogether. In one, you're sort of verifying the financial statements, and in another, you're advising the client through an M&A process. So yeah, overall, they're very different roles, and naturally different tasks that come with it.
Okay. So one thing that I think it's not clear out there is, what is the difference between working in M&A at the Big Four or working in M&A in investment banking? Can you break that down, how that works, and what are the differences?
Yeah, so I'd say the Big Four M&A compete with the boutique investment banks in this world, and they go for deals in a particular enterprise value range, so deal value range. The bulge bracket investment banks, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, as I said, they go for a higher sort of enterprise value range in general. There are other differences as well. For example, the Big Four, they are restricted in terms of certain advisory services that they can provide. And for example, they are restricted in terms of certain IPO services that they can offer, or advice that they can offer on IPOs. And again, this will be different depending on the regulation in the different jurisdictions. So I can only speak of the UK. I know in the UK, the Big Four are limited in terms of what services that they can offer when it comes to IPOs, and there are other limitations as well in terms of what services that you can provide to a client that you also provide audit services for. So that comes down to sort of independence and elements such as those. So there are restrictions in terms of what we can provide, what services we can provide when it comes to M&A. But the overall, I'd say we compete in the sort of middle market M&A space along with boutique investment banks. But there are situations where we also compete with the larger companies, with the larger sort of investment banks of this world. And in terms of the services that we offer on a day-to-day basis, they are very similar. So we are advising clients on if it's sell side, how they can sell their business or how they can sell a division within their business. So we'll be doing the same tasks. We'll be writing information memorandums. We'll be negotiating on behalf of them. We'll be providing them advice on M&A strategy, M&A tactics, managing the data room, etc. So very similar day-to-day responsibilities when it comes to providing sort of general M&A advice. But there are sort of certain restrictions that the Big Four have, which the bulge brackets don't have. But and I think another sort of difference is that I mentioned is the size of the companies that we work with. We do work with listed companies and very large companies when it comes to M&A, but I think the bulge bracket firms, they I think predominantly work with listed companies most of the times, all very large private companies. So yeah, those are about the key differences between the big four and then the investment banks.
Okay. So I was curious whether when it comes to M&A, are usually companies that approach you when they want to make such an operation? Do you approach them? And are usually these companies are usually the ones that you already audit for?
Yeah, so in terms of how we go about originating work, it's generally we generally take the first step, as in we will try and find clients that need assistance on M&A transactions, and so we are always talking to companies. We're talking to CEOs, CFOs, the owners of these businesses, trying to understand what their strategy is, trying to understand what their plans are for the future, and so we are definitely the ones taking the initial action, being on the front foot about things, because that's how we generally sort of generate work. And having this knowledge and having these relationships, we can then connect the dots. So we might speak to one company that can raise money, or that's got money in the bank, and they want to invest in a particular sector or a particular sort of product type, and then we on a different day speak to another company that's sort of willing, or another bunch of shareholders that are willing to sell their business, and then so we can connect the dots sometimes. But yeah, we certainly take that first step, and in terms of so that was the sell side. In terms of the buy side, we get in terms of the buy side, we normally get approached because a company will have in mind, right, we've received this investment opportunity, and we need someone to sort of advise us through the process and negotiation, and we might do some financial modeling for them as well. So in terms of the buy side, we are generally sort of we get offers in, but again, we need to have those relationships first so that they can then pick up the phone to us. So that's important. But another group of companies that we have great relationships with are private equity, and we work with a lot of private equity firms, middle market private equity firms. And the reason for this is the business model that they operate. They are always doing transactions. They've invested in companies to eventually exit from them. So they're always sort of they're always in the market looking for investment opportunities, and they're eventually going to sell these opportunities as well, or sell these investments. So yeah, we have a great relationship with private equity firms, and yeah, I think we work with a lot of private equity firms, and we do. And how it works in private equity, especially in middle market, is they are quite lean firms, private equity firms. So we take up a lot of their financial modeling responsibility because they don't have too many sort of analysts, or they don't take on too many analysts. So they'll approach us and ask us to do the financial modeling because we have much more capacity to do that.
Okay. So another curiosity that I have is, are there big differences between doing M&A for public companies and M&A for private companies in terms of compliance, regulation, and so on?
Yes, there are. That's a simple answer. Publicly listed companies, there's much more regulation. You need to notify a variety of different companies. You might have industry bodies as well that you need to notify. For example, I was doing a deal in the defense sector a couple of years ago, and we had to notify naturally a variety of different sort of industry bodies that sort of regulate this defense sector, and because naturally they have to understand who the ultimate owner is, and there are various different aspects to sort of these companies, large listed companies. but even in the private sector, we need to also sort of sometimes notify the competition authority as well, because we don't want to fall foul of any competition rules. And so, we make sure that we are we've got all the approvals that we need so that we don't hit a roadblock right at the end. And so, that's another responsibility we have, is to understand who we need approval from, and make sure that it's all received in the right at the right time.
Okay. So we talked a bit about M&A. Can you break down more or less how the process works from being going and pitching to the end result, and how much does it usually take? And maybe can you divide between how much it takes in the public sector and the private sector?
Yeah, so I'll start with this example of a sell-side role. So that's when we're helping a company sell a division, or we're helping a bunch of shareholders sell their stake in the business. And so what will normally happen is we'll be pitching alongside boutique investment banks or other big four companies, and we might get sort of maybe 3-4 weeks of preparation time. So we need to prepare this proposal document, and so as an analyst, when you first come in, you'll be spending a lot of time doing these documents. And so in these documents, you'll have, I suppose, you need to show 3 or 4 key things. One, you have got an understanding of the business that's being sold. So you need to understand what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are, what are the market trends that it's facing, and how do these market trends impact the potential transaction. So do these trends mean that a certain group of buyers will they be more interested because of this trend? So you need to understand what's going on in the market, what's going on in the particular industry. Another thing you need to understand is the buyers. As I said, you need to identify who is potentially going to buy this business, and why would they be willing to buy this business. Have they made previous transactions in the same space? Have they got new funding? It might be a company that's recently backed by private equity. So the private equity firm might be looking for bolt-on opportunities. So you need to have a good set of potential buyers, and you need to rationalize why they might be potential buyers. Another thing that you need to convey is what value are the shareholders going to get for this business or for the shares, because naturally they'll want to maximize the value, and you need to come up with a recommendation about what value the business is going to go for. And so you need to do some analysis. We might do a DCF if we get the right financial information, if we get the cash flow information, but generally we'll definitely do precedent transaction analysis. So looking at transactions in the same space of similar companies that have happened before, and what the value have been of these companies being sold, and then comparable companies or comparable listed companies. So those are the valuation methods that are covered. And then we'll also talk about the process. I suppose the fourth element is they'll want to understand how are you actually going to deliver this project. So when is it going to happen? Who's going to take responsibility? And so we convey all that information during the proposal. So it's quite a large document, getting all the right information across. But again, every pitch is different. Some shareholders are very familiar. They might have sold 2 or 3 businesses before, so they understand the process. So we might not spend as much time, but there might be, or it might be the case that it's a shareholder that's never sold the business before, so they want to understand everything, what you're going to do for them. So every pitch is different. So that's a pitch stage. So we do that. We get sort of 4 weeks preparation sometimes. Sometimes we get 1 week, which is challenging. That's when the late nights come in. And so after the proposal, if we are fortunate to win the project, we have a sort of kickoff meeting where we get sort of into the the skin of the business. We understand exactly what the business is about. We start developing relationship with the CEO, the CFO, and we start preparing this document, which is called the information memorandum. And so this is the main sales document where we highlight everything that a potential buyer will want to understand of the business at a high level. Clearly, we can't highlight everything. So this might be a document which is between 60 to 100 pages long, sometimes even longer. We'll talk about what the business does, who their customers are, what trends it's facing, what its financials are, what its financial forecasts are, which is really important. And then, yeah, what the operations are like, the supply chain, everything. So when someone reads that document, they'll have an understanding about why, firstly, why they should invest in this business and what makes it a great business. So those are, I suppose, the key things that we're trying to get across. So as an analyst, you'll be spending a lot of time writing these information memorandum documents. You'll be writing the sort of first draft, the second draft, and then you'll be working with your manager or your associate to refine these documents. So yeah, once these documents are complete, we then go out into the market and distribute this document to potential buyers. And naturally, you'll then have questions that come off of these documents, off of this document, and then we're answering questions for these buyers, just explaining what are the key sort of investment highlights, and then we sort of get sort of your first offer in from these potential buyers, anyone that's interested. These are called non-binding offers. There's no sort of obligation that comes with it, and then we take these offers and then present them in front of a client and see what they feel about them. Are they happy with them? And if they are, then we'll pick maybe 3-4 companies, it might be even more than that, that go and get more information. So they will then have access to something called a data room, where you get much more information about the financials, about the operations, even sort of regulatory documents. And so then the buyers can go into these documents and do their due diligence. And so here they might appoint due diligence advisors from their side, so buy side due diligence advisors, and so they'll ask hundreds of questions, maybe thousands of questions of you and the company. And so you as the M&A advisor have to be the sort of first point of call in terms of these questions. And so any questions that you can answer, we will answer, and then you then relay the questions which you can't answer to the management, and then you'll get answers from them. So there's a lot of back and forth in terms of answering all the questions. And so again, as an analyst, you'll be managing the data room, you'll be managing all the questions. There's something called a management presentation in this stage as well, where the management team will present their business to the potential buyer. And so then they can ask direct questions. And so again, this is putting the business in the best light in front of the potential buyers, trying to maximize value. Then you'll have another round of offers. So you get a final offer sometimes, or it might be another round of offers. And so the buyers will put on paper what they're willing to pay for the shares of the business. And then, you'll again sit down with your client and understand whether they're happy with it, whether they choose one particular buyer. And then you might go into something called an exclusivity phase, where that buyer is the only one that you're talking to, and they will have further questioning, they'll do further due diligence. And this is where it gets sort of really deep into the due diligence. You might look at tax issues, you might look at operational elements, you might look at IT infrastructure. And so again, you've got your M&A integration team that I spoke about earlier during the interview, where they might be appointed, and then they will ask particular questions about how are we going to integrate these two companies together. And so again, this phase might last a couple of months, it might last 1 month, depending on how things go. And then finally, the lawyers will also play a part in this. They'll be completing, or they'll be trying to finalize what's called a sales and purchase agreement in the UK. The SPA document, which is sort of lists down all the exact sort of rules by which the shares are being transferred, and every single sort of eventuality sort of covered in this SPA document. And so hopefully everything goes smoothly, and then you come to a completion where the document is signed, and then the funds transfer to the relevant parties. So that's the entire process. Clearly, there's a lot of work that goes in it, a lot of back and forth in terms of different buyers and questions and all this kind of stuff. And then I suppose the most interesting thing to me is the negotiation aspect of it, and how we can sort of go back to particular buyers and trying to sort of get more value out of them. That's probably the most interesting element to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting process. But yeah, that was a sort of very high level run through of it.
Okay, so it might be high level for you, but I think you went pretty much in detail for those who didn't get the chance to see that firsthand. So two curiosities come to mind in this case. Do you usually work along other investment banks, or do you work on yourself by yourself? And two is, since you talked about you do DCF and relative valuations, do you use the same tools as investment banks like Bloomberg or CapIQ or Refinitiv and so on?
Yeah, so we don't work alongside investment banks. We work on the other side of the table. So let's imagine a case where we're working on the sell side. We're helping shareholders to sell their shareholding in a company. There might be an investment bank that's advising the buy side.
Okay.
So there'll be buy side advisors. So they might be helping another bunch of shareholders to acquire that shareholding. So we will be going back and forth with them on a daily basis, and talking about issues that might be coming up. And so we generally don't work side by side. There are sort of very, very limited situations where you'll have two advisors on the same side, where both of them will try and find buyers for one particular company, and whoever sort of gets a deal done first sort of gets their reward. But it's a very, very unique situation, and people generally don't sign up to that because it's far too risky. You spend too much time in that process when you might not get return for that. So generally, that's how we work with investment banks. So sometimes we might be on the buy side, so we're helping a bunch of shareholders or a private equity firm buy a shareholding, and there'll be a sell side investment bank. So that's how we work, sort of with investment banks. I wouldn't say alongside, but with investment banks. But in terms of the tools, yes, we certainly use the same tools that investment banks use. So we use CapIQ in my company. We've got a Bloomberg terminal in the office as well. So we use the same tools. And the reason for that is, going back to the point I said previously, we offer the same services. So we're doing the same valuation that an investment bank does. And you do see a lot of, and I'm sure they'll be coming onto the sort of exit opportunities. A lot of people that work in big four M&A go on to work at boutique investment banks, and then some at larger banks as well. So the skills are the same, and the tools and techniques that we use are the same as well.
Okay. So you talked about investment bank. Can you tell us a bit more about the exit opportunities? What are the most popular, and what are the most, let's say, the most wanted as a person coming out of the Big Four?
Yeah, so I'll go into sort of different teams. So audit, for example, you have different exit opportunities in front of you if you come out of audit and tax and then in M&A. So let me start with audit first. So as I said before, when you do audit, you get a good sort of foundation of accounting knowledge. And so you see a lot of people that have this audit background then move into industry. And so when you move into industry, when I say industry, I mean you work for a corporation in the finance team. So you'll work in as a financial controller, for example, or you might work in a particular sort of team within the finance team that might be looking at just accounts receivable or accounts payable. If it's a very large company, that might be the case. So you work within the finance team and you're helping prepare the management accounts. And so when you're an auditor, you've got a good understanding of how management accounts are prepared, and then how that sort of translates into the statutory accounts. So you understand adjustments and all these kind of things. So that's a very common exit path for people that have done audit, working in the corporation, working in the finance team, helping them to prepare management accounts. Then you also have FP&A, which stands for financial planning and analysis. So this is using the management accounts and using financial data within the corporation to help the decision-making process. So I think that's a really interesting element or interesting team within the corporation as well. And then again, in audit, you might then transition into corporate finance. You might transition into due diligence, into M&A sometimes, but more likely you go straight into due diligence. So those are probably the most common elements or the most common exit opportunities. In tax, I suppose what's unique is you are fairly sort of restricted. After you build up certain technical knowledge, you generally don't veer away from tax because you spend a lot of time developing that technical knowledge. You might go and work in another tax advisory firm. You might go and work for another Big Four. Or sometimes I've even heard of people working for the tax regulator as well. So you normally generally tend to stick to the tax route or tax field. Then when it comes to M&A, exit opportunities, a lot of individuals move across to boutique investment banks after they work with Big Four. They might go and work for another Big Four in the M&A team, so just work at a competitor. And then, yeah, you do get some people that go and work in sort of corporations, work in sort of internal M&A, so corporate development. So this is a small team within a corporation that does M&A sort of from within the corporation itself. So they are basically M&A advisors within the company. You'll find this in sort of large listed companies generally have sort of corp dev teams, but these teams aren't very big, so these opportunities don't come along too often. But you've got the right skills to do these roles. And then private equity is another one. A lot of people do want to work in private equity after they've done their sort of stint at a Big Four M&A. But there are a lot of people. It's a very competitive sort of process getting into a private equity role, whether you come in as an associate, as a VP, for example, because again, you've got people from Big Four that have done M&A. You've got people that are at boutique investment banks that again have the same skills, and you've got people from the bottom bracket that might be looking to get into private equity as well. So it's a very competitive process. But then again, I think I suppose the way you do it is you work with these private equity firms as clients, and then you build those relationships. And then once they get their trust in you and they understand that you've got the right technical skills and that you can deliver transactions, that's when you have the best opportunity to transition across from the sell side to private equity.
Okay. You talked a bit about it, but is it common to see people moving within the Big Four, and what are the motivations to do so?
Yeah, so it is common. It is very common to see people move across the Big Four. So the motivations I think are fairly obvious. I think you get opportunities. So, for example, sometimes there might be quite a few people in front of you at a particular Big Four, and so you might not get the promotion opportunity that you're hoping for, and so you might get that opportunity elsewhere in another Big Four. And so, especially after you've qualified as a CA and after you've got 3, 4, 5 years of experience, the other Big Four know that you've got the right skills and that you are a talented individual, so they can take comfort on your technical ability. And so, yeah, if they can offer you that promotion opportunity quickly, or they can offer you that promotion opportunity in that new role itself. So you might be a senior analyst, you might get the manager position by going to different Big Four. That might be an attractive proposition, and that might make you move from one Big Four to another. And what generally happens is, especially if you're not in London, I'm not based in London, the Big Four in different cities, you eventually start to come across the same individuals in networking events and let's say in deals, working in deals or in projects. And so you sort of build a reputation in the market, in the local market. And so eventually people know who you are, and you sort of build relationships with even with your competitors or peers or whatever you want to call it. And so you sort of have these sort of private conversations on the side and see what opportunities there are. So it works slightly different in London. London's such a large place. There's so many talented people around. I think it's naturally recruiters play a larger role in that city. But going back to your question, you do see a lot of people that jump from one big four to another.
Okay. So one of the last things that I wanted to know is how did your day-to-day tasks change as you got more senior positions?
Yeah, so initially when you come in, you will be doing the first drafts of many documents, whether that's the information memorandum, other marketing materials. You'll be doing a lot of the hard sort of legwork. You'll be formatting changes, for example, on PowerPoint presentations. You'll be spending a lot of time doing formatting changes. But you'll also be developing your sort of writing skills as well. So even things like DCF, you'll be developing your modeling skills. And so what you'll generally see is you'll have the first attempt at a particular task. As you get into a more senior role, what you'll be doing is you'll have someone junior and you'll be advising them on how they should be doing that particular task, or you'll be reviewing their work. So as a senior analyst, for example, the analyst, the first year analyst might do the DCF, but you then need to go into that DCF model and make sure that the numbers are the right ones and everything's flowing through. They're using a sensible discount rate, etc., etc. So you'll start to do more review work, but that's on top of your own responsibilities. So you will have more responsibilities. You might be doing much more client interaction. So once you get into senior analyst, you'll be speaking to the CFO. You'll be speaking to the management accountant at your client on a very regular basis. You might be speaking to counterparties. You might be leading meetings. So you'll have your own responsibilities as a senior analyst, but then you'll have this additional responsibility of making sure that the analysts in the team are doing their job right. You're making sure that they aren't making mistakes, and you're making sure that things are progressing as they should and timelines are being hit. Once you get into manager, again, this sort of you still have the same role where you're making sure that the work that the analyst is doing, the senior analyst is doing, is correct. So, again, you'll be reviewing the DCF, you'll be reviewing the documents that they create, you'll be advising them on where changes are required. Your responsibility sort of increases as well in terms of you'll be speaking to the CFO a lot, or the management accountant a lot. You'll be the go-to person on the deal. They'll be bringing you when they have a problem or when they have a question. So you'll be the main point of contact really during the project. And then again, you're making sure that the deadlines are being hit, but you're also setting the deadlines for the junior staff and making sure that those sort of smaller deadlines are being met. And so you're responsible for making sure that the client's happy, and you're making sure that even the partner in your team is happy with the progress. So you're relaying the feedback in terms of how the client's feeling about things, how the counterparty is feeling about things, back to the partner. So if they have to make a particular decision, if they need to go and speak to the counterparty, they can do so. So you are, as the title suggests, you are managing the entire project. And I suppose I think what would be interesting to go into is how that then again changes from manager to senior manager and then into the highest levels. And so the key thing there is you have much more responsibility when it comes to originating work. And so once you at senior manager level, everything is your responsibility. And so the partner is going to point the finger at you if things go wrong. you're, apart from this role, you're also doing another role where you're originating work. So you're helping to win the new client. You're helping to win new clients. So you're helping to win new engagements. And so you need to go out there in the market, build relationships. As I said before, speak to CEOs, speak to CFOs, speak to shareholders of different businesses, and try and understand what their plans are for the future for their business. And so you're trying to win that new mandate, win the next mandate. And so, yeah, you need to be out in networking events, speaking to private equity firms, and yeah, just be out and about in the market, building relationships. And so this is all on top of making sure that the project is still going on. And so I suppose the most challenging element, I suppose, is in the whole career part is that phase where you've got sort of two completely, they are related responsibilities, but they are almost separate as well. So you're making sure that the project is going well, but you're also making sure that you're getting the next project in the door as well. So that's the biggest challenge. But then once you get past senior manager, you get to director and sort of partner level, and that's where a lot of your role is making sure that the project doesn't come off the tracks completely, but yeah, you're spending most of your time trying to win the next mandate and building those relationships. So yeah, that's how the progression sort of goes, and yeah, that's a really interesting sort of phase in my sort of career now. I suppose what I'm doing manager now, and hopefully in a few years I'll be senior manager, but then I need to start sort of I am already developing those skills about building relationships and being that individual that brings the sales in for the team. So that's an interesting transition for me to go through, and for everyone that's at this position. So you get less technical, but your role starts to develop into more relationship building and just high level management of projects.
Okay, so I think you summed up pretty well. You start off by focusing on technical skills, and as you will become more senior, you have to focus more on people skills and building relations and so on. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so yeah, do you have any tips for standing out when it comes to promotion? Are there some kind of behaviors or technical capabilities that will make you stand out when it comes to promotion? Can you think about any of that?
Yeah, and I think it all clearly depends on each different department. For example, in audit, you need to have a very solid understanding of how accounts are sort of created and how it all ties together. If you don't have that understanding, you're just not going to get promoted, because clients are going to be looking to you, CFOs and financial controllers are going to be looking to you and asking you questions about how certain accounting policies are applied, for example. And so if senior people in your team don't trust you to have the answers, you're not going to get promoted. But aside from the technical aspect, you also need to make sure that you have the ability to hit deadlines. But it's not only you that are hitting deadlines for your work, but you need to make sure that people underneath you are hitting deadlines as well, their deadlines, and the entire team is progressing the project or progressing the audit on time and so within budget as well. In terms of M&A, I suppose one thing is unique is there's so many sort of things going on simultaneously. You need to be able to juggle a lot of different balls at the same time. And another element, I think, one also sort of advice I can give is just taking full ownership of tasks. And so I think especially at the start, you're not going to understand, or you're not going to get everything right at the first attempt. But if you take full ownership and then you ask the right questions and you show that you're a proactive individual, I think people respect that and people understand that you're willing to learn. So definitely be on the front foot. Put your hand up and say, I'll take responsibility for this task. Don't wait for people to give you tasks, or don't wait for your manager to sort of give you tasks and say, right, this is what you need to do. start thinking ahead. And I think that a very sort of cliched advice to give is just start behaving like you've already got the promotion, and start behaving like how you would do in that more senior role, and then people realize that you are sort of ready for that next role. So that's a very common way to go about it. And I think that's the best way to go about it. You just start, your behavior needs to be as if you've already got that promotion, and so you take up that additional responsibility. And I think dealing, especially in M&A, showing that you're comfortable dealing with clients is incredibly important. So have individual conversations with the CFO of a company, have individual conversations with counterparties when it's right, and make sure that you're prepared for these conversations. So I think what's helped me is just being prepared, asking the right questions, asking intelligent questions, showing that you're you're just not reacting to situations, but you're proactively thinking ahead, anticipating certain issues that might arise, and then coming up with solutions as well. So I think you really have to be on the front foot, and I think that's really helped me, showing that I am willing to roll my sleeves up and then sort of take up responsibility, and also being proactive and sort of thinking ahead about what issues might come up, and then preparing myself for them.
Okay. So you explained it very, very well, how important it is to be proactive. So I'm done with the questions. If you have anything else you want to share with us, you're welcome to do so. If not, I really want to thank you for your time and for sharing your experience on my channel. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and hope the viewers got value and good sort of advice from this video. And one piece of advice I'd say is it's a very challenging job market at the moment, in every country. You get so many talented individuals coming out of university, but I think if you prepare yourself well in terms of interviews, etc., and you sort of have that confidence, I think that's really important when it comes to getting your foot in the door. And once you get your foot in the door, I think if you're, as I said, if you're proactive and if you're willing to learn and you show that enthusiasm, I think you can achieve a lot in your career. So I just say be proactive, and make sure you're prepared for everything.
Okay, so thank you a lot. The link for his channel will be in the description, also in the title. So make sure to subscribe to his channel as well. So this is it for today. I'm Giacomo. This is Hustle Hub. See you next time.
Right, thank you.